What's going on, y'all? It's Athletes Culture again, coming at you with another video. So let's talk about all throughout NBA Twitter, there's this talk about who's going to be contending for NBA title this year, for this upcoming season. And like every typical year, there's always those common names. Obviously, the teams that made it to the conference finals last year, and then the team who actually won the championship. Now, obviously, you know, my give or take, who's the best team in the NBA right now is the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, not just for the fact that they are the defending champions, but they have arguably two top five players on their roster, and no other team in the NBA is boasting that. So, talent alone, and they're recovering all fronts with those two top five talents. They have the perimeter on lock with LeBron, and they have down low locked with Anthony Davis, coupled with the size that they're coming back with. I mean, they really try to shore up the loss of Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee with Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell. I mean, they slightly got smaller and not as long as they were last season, to be quite frank. But, they still kept Kyle Kuzma. They still got LeBron. KCP's coming back. Basically that fit, that structure that they had in terms of their defense, I think it's still solid, still solidly there. As long as you get Anthony Davis to re-sign, it's still going to be there. And Anthony Davis, like I said, is when he's playing when he's at his best, he's arguably a top five player, you know? And then LeBron is a surefire top five player. Some still even have him as the best player in the world. But, when it comes to this upcoming season, we can't forget last year, the Clippers beat the Lakers handedly and during the regular season. I mean, it wasn't towards the end where things started to taper off before you know, the whole bubble started, where the Lakers got a couple wins in there against the Clippers. But opening night, Christmas, it was clearly evident that the Clippers were a better team than the Los Angeles Lakers. So this whole letdown, with the Paul George meltdown, the whole thing, how it worked out with Trez and then Lou Williams not being himself, I think this upcoming season, we thought the Lakers were front runners last year in the beginning. Um, you can actually make a claim as to why they were considered front runners. Like, I mean, the bubble really helped them out. We can't really discount that. But at the end of the day, it counts. They won. They were more focused. The bubble actually showed what was a more focused team, and that was the Lakers. And the Lakers got that, and now the game has changed to being a big game. Sports is a copycat league. Teams want to copy. But the point I want to make on this is like the Clippers still have a chance to be a contending team. And the question is, are they willing to pull the trigger and let Lou Williams go? Now, the reason why is, I'm of the belief that it may be time to part from Lou Williams is this. You got to start planning for the future. You've over leveraged your future with Paul George. A lot is riding on him. You gave up the draft picks. Everything is basically on the success of Paul George Kawhi experiment. And if you were to give up, a player like Lou Williams right now, and say trade him to a team, like Detroit, and pick up a player like, let's say, a Derrick Rose in combination with Trevor Ariza or Jahlil Okafor. Jalil really helps answer your questions with lack of, usable bigs. And I would say, a lot of people say, well, what do you mean? Well, Jalil's still a solid player, and I'll get into that later. But, Derrick Rose, he has 1 year left of about over 7 million, close to $8 million in his contract. Lou Williams has an exactly $8 million contract left this year, and then he'll be a free agent. But Lou Williams isn't going to be your starting point guard. And I feel like Derrick Rose can help bring that. And then you can also leverage the fact that, hey, we're giving you cap space, and a quality player in Lou Williams who's not too far from removed from being a Six Man of the Year award. You're going to have to toss in like a Trevor Ariza. And then we can obviously toss in a Patrick Beverly. So if you were to get a dual trade of Derrick Rose, Trevor Ariza, coming from Detroit, maybe toss in Jahlil Okafor, and then you trade Lou Williams and Patrick Beverly, I really think that shores up the Clippers. The Clippers become a better team that way. They address the point guard issue. Derrick Rose is still a usable point guard. I mean, there was chatter about him going to be the starting point guard in Milwaukee. Now, I wasn't fond of that because I don't think that really meshes well with what Giannis feel like that's just a duplication of what those two players bring, attacking players that aren't really the greatest outside shooters. But with Derrick Rose coming in there, he not only can play with the bench, use him in spots, but then he can also run the floor generalship. So you can really utilize him in a lot of different scenarios. Now, on the defensive aspect, Patrick Beverly is, he is a great defensive aspect to the Clippers. Like that, I wouldn't necessarily want to give up so easily. But the fact that that's why I had to toss in like a Trevor Ariza in the deal, just in my head, I would toss in a Trevor Ariza or a Jahlil Okafor. So you're getting a quality defender. I mean, this is an all NBA caliber, type of defensive player that you're getting in Patrick Beverly. So you can't give up somebody like that easy. Despite what he's giving you offensively, the fear fact is he's an all defensive, all NBA defensive type of guard. You don't have that, and we're giving that up. So you have to factor those things in. So I've said in previous videos, like GMs that make the ballsy moves, that make the trades that some people say are crazy, but then ended up working. Those are the ones that win titles. That's how it's gonna get done. And I feel like both Trevor Ariza and Derrick Rose can actually revitalize themselves because now they're playing on a Clipper team and they're playing with purpose. Trevor Ariza is someone who's been part of a championship team. He knows what it takes to win a championship. He wants to end his career on a high note. I think the guy's like 34 years old. So he's coming in there with a focus, veteran leadership, knowing his place. And that's something that the Clippers didn't have last season. Derrick Rose, same thing. He's trying to revitalize his career. He at least wants to leave out with something to say, not only was I an MVP award winner, I was an NBA champion. So, I think this is just more so creating like cap space as well as getting focused players that are there to fill in a role, knowing their place and building a hierarchy. And on top of that, they can actually be inspirational vocal leaders that the Clippers are needing that they don't have coming out from Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. That could be Derrick Rose, that could be Trevor Ariza. So with that said, I think that really helps, and then Jahlil Okafor can really be an insurance policy to Ivica Zubac. Now, people forget, Jahlil Okafor got a really raw deal in Philadelphia after his rookie season. Remember, they took him because nobody was too sure if Joel Embiid was going to come back. Joel Embiid got hurt, and I don't think he played his first year. And people just thought it was going to be another Greg Oden situation, so they got the insurance policy in Jahlil Okafor. And I think the Clippers can use that same type of tactic in terms of him being an insurance policy for Ivica Zubac if Zubac falls out. Jahlil, somebody who averaged, 18 a game, 7 rebounds a game. His rookie season made it on the all-rookie first team. So he is no scrub. This is a player, who averaged over at least a block a game. He can score down low. He can bring to you what Ivica is giving to you offensively. He has nice hands, soft touch around the rim. He's not a big center. He's not a 7-footer, but he's versatile. You can put him at the 4 spot if need be. He can hit some jumpers from the pinch post. He can bang down low. You just have to be able to tell him like, hey, we're going to need you to step it up defensively, which I know he can. He has a work ethic. He has a focus. He's looking to revitalize his career and show people that he deserves to be in this league. People just quit on him because Philadelphia just gave him a raw deal. When he asked out of Philadelphia was just hoarding onto him until they could get the right pieces, and it just basically ruined his value. So I think the Clippers are a nice destination for all 3 of those players, Derrick Rose, Trevor Ariza, Jahlil Okafor, to leave Detroit, come over, and revitalize themselves with a team that's looking for a championship, and they all bring something that the Clippers were lacking last year. They bring focus, they bring determination, they bring the willpower, the will to say like, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice myself for a greater good. That's something that the Clippers need. They have arguably one of the best players in the world in Kawhi Leonard. Paul George, in some people's accounts, no longer mine, is a top 10 player. So I don't see why it shouldn't work. And with these players can play at a faster speed to basically counteract what the Lakers are wanting to do by bullying people down low and beating them up with size. They can counteract that, with playing faster. So all said and done, these are all hypotheticals. These are just my thought. I personally like Lou Williams. Lou Williams is a great guy, but for what the Clippers need, I think him being a scorer and not really adding anything to the defensive end of things, especially during the playoffs, does not necessarily help the Clippers. You know, when Paul George was around, or Kawhi was missing, it worked because then that next he became, the secondary on offense. When both of them were out, it was great. Lou Williams was really cooking because he was their go-to offensive getter, and a lot of people fell into that. But when both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were on the floor, it was like Lou Williams didn't have a place to fit in. There's only one ball, and there's not really that much enough to go around for three other players that, are bucket getters. And I think Lou Williams would do great in Detroit. I think he'd definitely start over there. He can definitely put up points in bunches. He has a good rapport with Blake Griffin. So I think it's something that they can actually close out on a high note, especially for Lou Williams, who's looking at this being the tail end of his career. But I want to hear what y'all have to say. Like, comment, subscribe down below. I'm out.